What's the best way to start your golf downswing? If you find yourself asking this question, then this video is really for you. I'm going to be explaining about how we should be starting from the ground up, and I'm going to be sharing with you a great exercise to make sure you're starting your downswing correctly. Welcome back to the TruGolf Academy. You've joined me, Jon Watts, today at Branston Golf and Country Club. Today's video is all going to be about the start of the downswing. So it's a question I get asked a lot on social media and comments to my YouTube videos, which is a great way to get in touch and ask for relevant videos for you, anything I can help. Before we get started, if you haven't already, make sure you hit the thumbs up if you enjoy the content of this video, and do subscribe to my channel for all the other content every Tuesday and Thursday. Today's video, as I mentioned, is the downswing movement. So we're talking about how we start the downswing, the transition movement from the top of the backswing to the start of the downswing. And it's an area that's often perhaps misinterpreted. It's an area that is often wrong with amateur golfers when we see them up and down the range, and an area golfers are just struggling with. And it's a question I get asked a lot, as I mentioned there, on social media. How do we start our downswing? And most of us are aware we're trying to start with our ground up, but the most common fault is perhaps an over-dominating upper body, where we see more of a lunge with our shoulders towards the golf ball and an outer sequence movement. So really, as we get into this transition movement, we want to, as I've said, start ground up. So we'd want it to be our knee, then our hip, then our core, then our chest, our shoulder, our elbow, our wrist and hand in sequence. But you'd never focus on that. If I asked you to throw a ball or skim a stone, you'd get to this backswing movement here with your pressure on your trail foot furthest away from the target, and you wouldn't start with your upper body, your shoulders. You'd start with the lower body first. There would be a little bit of separation here of your lead knee wanting to go out towards the target. There would then be some rotation of your knee and your hip, and then your core, shoulder, elbow, wrist, hand before we release the ball. And that's where we generate some speed from that sequence of events. But it's often gone wrong in the downswing when we're talking about holding a golf club. And the real reason for that is when we've got a little white ball in front of us and we get to the top of the backswing here, we know that the quickest way to get down to that golf ball is with our upper body leading and throwing that club out and a very downward blow. Sometimes it even comes from golfers trying to think about hitting down. Maybe you struggle taking a divot and therefore you thought, well, I'll just hit down on the ball more. But when your brain is thinking hit down, the quickest way, as I said, to get that club down to the ground, down to the earth, is a very vertical chop and therefore led with the upper body rather than the correct sequence of the lower body first. So I'm going to be sharing you with a simple drill using here a basketball, football, obviously, anything along those lines, beach ball would do the same job. You could even use a range bucket if you're on the driving range, and that's more handy. But what we're going to be doing is getting to the top of the backswing, and my feeling is going to be holding with my trail knee. So my trail knee is my one furthest away from the target. So for me as a right-handed golfer, that's my right knee. I want to feel like I hold position on my trail knee, but get my lead knee just separating that little bit. It's a small movement, but if I can increase that gap, that width between my knees as that start movement, it means my pressure is starting to lead or move towards my lead foot. It's starting to get my lower body unwinding before my upper body. And that's a real good start to the downswing. Now, my arms, if I get this correctly, would just naturally start to fall to about halfway down to around hip height. So rather than me getting that feeling of pulling my arms down, if I can get that lower body sequence correctly, my right knee, my trail knee holds position, my lead knee moves out and around, that gets my hips closer to center, and that allows my arms to drop. Now, I've filmed a couple of videos talking about starting the downswing, centering the hips, and it's all in the hips, and these are very relevant videos, so I'm going to put some links just up here that's well worth checking out. Let me jump into this drill. So we're going to go with the ball between, and it could be anything, bucket, anything that you've got handy, between your knees. This ball's quite a good size just to still keep me about shoulder width apart, so somewhere like that. probably just a little bit higher than knee, so it's sitting up there, just so you can hold position of it. What I'm going to be getting is wind up to the top and still trying to allow that hip rotation. So don't feel like we're limiting lower body movement on the backswing. I still want you to actually turn your shoulders and turn those hips into the backswing movement. But what we're going to try and get the feeling of is holding with our trail knee and our lead knee just moving out and back here. So it's almost moving to its original position. If you see, my lead knee kicks in a little bit as my trail hip turns behind me. So I'm just trying to get my lead knee back to its original position. So it started here, it moves, it gets back to its original position, which recenters my hips, and that allows my arms to drop, and that starts to apply this pressure towards my lead foot, which is the exact movement I'm looking for. So we could go ahead and actually hit some shots this way. So we may even break it down into a small movement where we stop, drop, and hit. And then once we've advanced from there, we could start doing it without the stop, but just doing it as a slow swing. Okay, so we can start to build that sequence of events with our lower body starting to sequence correctly. I'm not going to discuss the upper body in this video. What I want is the lower body to start to allow the upper body to actually drop rather than being pulled. So the lower body is starting first, the upper body is just reacting to that. So my arms are falling into position at halfway down. Now, the question I'm sure I'm going to get is, what would I do from this position once I've recentered my hips? It's that real feeling of rotating and extending that lead side. And again, I have talked about that in other videos, so I won't go into too much depth here, but the next sequence of events would be what the trail leg is doing into impact. That lead hip is rotating, that lead side is extending. Now we could focus on it lots of different ways, but I'm going to share with you a couple of ideas in some videos that are well worth checking out just up here also. Let me try two shots, one where I do it as a stop exercise and one where I try and do it with a bit of motion. I'd perhaps go for, I haven't got a T-peg here, but I'd perhaps just go with a T-peg just to make it a little simpler, a little easier. Wind up, drop, and then that feeling of extending that lead side. So we're almost putting the two parts into it there. On this one, I'm just going to go in motion. I'm using the 7-iron here and mid-iron, but this video is relevant with any golf club. This is the same sequence of events if we're talking about a driver. So I'm going to try and do it with no stop, just getting that feeling of my trail knee holding position, my lead knee moving back to where it was really, so out and around on the start of the downswing. I'm a little bit too far away, that feels better. And you can see a nice slow pace. I don't want you to feel like you're trying to belt it to start with, but I really got that sensation of holding with my trail knee, my lead knee moving out and around. So getting back to its original position where it started at setup, that helps me maintain my posture, that gets me applying pressure towards my lead side, and it gets me feeling a little bit delayed with my upper body. So if I can get my lower body actually turning without my upper body, we're creating a bigger X factor stretch, more speed, more separation, or we could call it disassociation. We're trying to create that difference on the start of the downswing, rather than the move we see so commonly where everything moves together, upper body and lower body. And as I said at the start, often because we've got that ball in front of us, we're perhaps trying to think about hitting down on it, and we just get the wrong sequence of events. If this video has helped, make sure you hit that thumbs up. And as I said at the start, do subscribe to my channel so you never miss a video again. Cheers, guys.